Welcome back. This is part 9 of our Galactic history. I'm Lance White with Andrew Bartzis. Now, we were talking about the ascension process, and one of the things that you've been talking about is the importance of dream cities.
Correct.
And that's different from the air cities that Lemuria created. A dream city.
Sort of.
Okay.
The old Lemurian air cities will become our new dream cities, because an air city is a group of sentients that put their energy together. The unmanifested body put their energies together and made a functional vessel, reality, drive, energy vehicle, and it can be anchored in the space in between air molecules in the North Pole. So there can be a tremendous amount of them there. The dream cities specifically are places that were created by ancestors in a specific spot that of the sentience of Earth that says this DNA lineage, all of those members may dream into this realm or dream into this realm. The air cities will exist in technically all of the dream realms when you're ready to ascend to the highest layer of that realm to meet the highest layer of your ancestors in that line.
Wow, so it could be a multi-dimensional process.
It is all multidimensional.
Okay.
Nothing is single dimensional.
Right,
anymore.
so you could be in the 9th and the 5th and the...
The beginning is about connecting to your ancestors, physically with our star brothers and sisters.
Okay, good.
And then dream time, the soul family versions of them. The ones you recognize from all the other lifetimes.
Okay, so when people are concerned, there's a big movement for disclosure.
Mm-hmm.
The ascension process is the ultimate disclosure because you're actually moving back to your family, your soul family of origin,
Mm-hmm.
which is all the different galactic
Correct.
that you had.
And then the ones that are in Hollow Earth that are the ones that are next door neighbors.
Ah, right. So
And we'll have to meet the neighbors pretty quick.
ah, yes. Now, are there plasma beings below too?
Oh yes.
Okay, and so there are probably numerous
There's
sentient.
Numerous that we have not even begun to comprehend yet.
And are they all also independent of our?
There's many reflections inside Hollow Earth. There's dinosaurs in there because they didn't die out. They just became an ancestor spirit for other animals.
Huh.
Okay?
Okay.
It all is reused and recycled.
So any species that's extinct
Is there.
Is there. Nothing really dies. Everything
It
lives,
just moves
is
on to a
eternal
different
and
dimension.
infinite. Okay. And so death is the same way. It's just
Correct.
a transition from one dimension to another, or from a limitation of dimensions to unlimited. Unless you're being recycled through the archontic grid,
And then you don't get to that all the other wonderful stuff. You just
And-
get put right back in.
and your memory is erased on top of it.
Because
So
that's the rules of our world.
those are the rules of our world, which was supposed to be free will, and currently is.
Well, it's supposed to be 100% free will with no memories. So that was its intention.
And it's become more like
Virtually no
free will, and then very few memories,
Very
if any,
few memories, if any.
and closing. And so the ultimate game for those who would play God, or who want to be the victors, would be total enslavement of the species
Correct.
permanently, without the need for expending large amounts of energy on maintaining them.
Right. Because they can just take it from us.
Right, and so they're using our energy. Do they get energy from source as well?
No.
So we are their source.
We are their source on purpose. When they wanted to go after service to self-ascension,
Mhm.
these are the 15 multidimensional beings, when they decided they would do that, they were a little mafia. And that little mafia agreed that the big date is here, way, way, way in the future, and we're way, way over here. Let's work together for the first 12 million years. Then after that, it's anyone's game.
Okay.
They did. They agreed to work together for that long of a time to set this up,
Which is right now.
which is right now.
But if they're working to set it up, they must be pretty certain that they've won.
No, they mostly know they know. They've lost. But they have so many pieces, parts of themselves that have so much ego from being in domination and control.
Right.
They're not even perceiving they've lost yet. So essentially the hive mind that has given sovereign free will to be dominating species has lost its sovereign control over those sovereign entities.
Plus then you have the rogue elements, and then you have each of the 15 having cards up their sleeves.
And then you put the walk-ins into them.
Oh yeah, right. So it's anybody's game. Now,
Exactly.
you said also that there is a council of 12 that oversees
Correct. Council of 12 energy beings.
Okay.
And they're
And
the ones that sit on the spiritual courts of equity to make sure soul families can't resolve issues.
okay, and since Earth has been removed from the process,
Blocked
blocked
by
then,
technology.
then the system has been taken over and corrupted. So, and as you said, several of those members were kicked off, and so currently,
Walked in.
what's the current status of the Council of 12?
I can't actually tell you the number of the ones that are walking. It wouldn't be right because they know, but there are people that know, and then there are people that just shouldn't know.
Okay, gotcha. but it's in the process of being,
yes, a number of
the
them have
equity
been
is
replaced.
being
A number of them have been
it's been
replaced, as well as
rebalanced.
their henchmen, minions, everything in their line.
And it seems like a good chess move would be to not let those that have been playing with you know that
Correct.
you've walked in. You're there, and you're still the same controller that they've always
And there's
known.
no difference because you hold all the contracts.
You hold the contracts, and of course, you pick up all the information and the memories and everything else, the
Absolutely.
cellular, so on. Do they have cells?
That's
Okay, so they have a physicality of sorts, or could have.
the main Council of 12 doesn't actually have bodies, though they can use an octopus system to go into multiple entities to issue controls to the system.
Ah. So how do they? Okay.
They're
So
puppets. They do puppetry
ah,
of people.
so they're not really necessarily looking out for the ascension process, and right. It's all been, that part has been corrupted as well.
Correct.
Okay. Now who oversees the Council of 12?
No one but
Nobody?
the Prime Creator. It was his final deadline. They
And-
had free will to do that until the deadline.
And the deadline is when?
Passed already, March 20th to the 22nd.
Okay.
Management reshuffle.
Okay.
We had timeout, management reshuffle.
Okay.
Now to after the 21st, time on, game's on.
Okay. So it's going to be gloves are off.
Fighting with themselves internally and
Right.
externally.
Right, because the way
As people come out and start telling their truth.
and that's going to be an interesting process and that will definitely hit the news. So the news will
It'll be a
have
multi-dimensional game of whack-a-mole. This one comes up, no whack. This one comes up, whack. This one comes up, whack. 15 come up, oh, where do I hit first?
sounds like fun. So we will see in short order within my lifetime, for
Mhm.
sure, the collapse of the control of the media,
Correct.
the controls by the church.
The church will be spectacular.
Oh yes, yes.
They hold a lot of cards. And think of it as a game of poker.
Okay.
You got to show your. Oop, we got a friendly moth coming through.
Hello.
It's a multi-dimensional moth.
Right. It's blessing us. Healing.
Think of it a game of 7-card Texas Hold'em poker, and it's everyone's got to show their hands. Well, there's 1,000 people at the table. The first guy to show his hands
right.
shows tens and jacks.
Okay.
Pretty good. So the 999 other people out there that are there have to show their cards too and beat that.
Oh my God. And then once the first domino falls, it'll be like V for Vendetta.
Correct.
You know, and what will precipitate that first domino falling? Because as I see it, as I've seen
It's
it,
dreams first.
okay, dreams first. Okay.
Dreams at the kid level, dreams at the adult level, dreams at the senior citizen level. Because they will
Ah.
have to be woken up differently.
Oh,
Okay.
right.
A senior citizen and a kid, big difference between the two.
That's right.
Plus the ages and vibrations they grew up in. So as that first wave comes and the kids and the senior citizens suddenly see eye to eye, and the adults are trying to look into two directions instead of one.
Mm-hmm.
You have a time for the separations of generations because our media has made us one amalgamation generation.
Mm.
So we have to. That's one of the first separation of densities.
Huh.
So there
So,
will be elderly that realize they're a kid,
ah,
that are their young spirit,
right.
and they'll revert their age.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
Nice.
There'll be kids who realize they're much older and will age very fast.
Huh.
And then there'll be the middle adults who determine if they're going to be the new elders
Right.
or if they're going to try for the process to get out.
Ah,
So they got their choices: teaching or learning.
wow. And that will all be service to all, or service to others.
Well, service
in a
to
sense.
self will take on a whole new meaning. Healing yourself is
right.
healing the whole.
Right. But the whole element of only self-service was the part that will be
Correct. The selfishness part of it.
Right.
And
And
the
so,
consumerism and the monetarism all we have no purpose.
so that means also a collapse of Wall Street and the banking system
Well, collapse
of some sort, a transformation.
Let's look at collapse as the linguistics, because this is one of the tricky parts that I as the interpreter of the Akashic record have to repeat into a linguistics that's meant to limit you consciously, meant to limit you
Right.
intonation. When we say, because this is a buzzword, the collapse
Yeah.
of the financial system,
Yeah.
collapse is, for me, the intonation behind it is fear.
Right.
It is
That's right.
fear.
It is fear.
But when you look at collapse, there are other ways to use it. You can say collapsing a timeline, which is allowing to revert to normal. There's so much data behind the stock market system, even though it's completely rigged. There's always been a sentience in the up and down, and they use these predictive models based off of our DNA scans and the etheric satellites that are up there that can basically give you a computational model of what all of the sentience on a given section of a county or a state is, and then they can look at all of those and make a bar and a chart of all the consciousness changes that are going on each day as the sun goes around and around and around, and they can make a predictive model of how much sentience is growing or ascending.
And then make adjustments accordingly.
Correct.
And is a large part of that the artificial intelligence network?
Yes, it functions with the etheric satellites, and then the
Right.
artificial intelligence networks create cells that interpret the data at the human level, human psychic interactor level.
And they can be faked out, right?
Correct.
Artificial intelligence.
Oh,
It doesn't necessarily recognize irony or
right,
humor.
it runs programs to put you into fake realities,
Okay.
which leads to the question you were asking: how do we know we're not going into a false light reality?
Right. During this ascension process, how can we know?
You go to the North Pole and you communicate with the entity of Earth,
Okay.
and you align your citizenship as a galactic citizen of Earth.
So that's where Santa Claus is. There is a Santa Claus.
The Santa Claus.
So, and we align ourselves with the sentience of Earth, which some people like to call Gaia Sophia.
Correct.
So,
It'll have a very motherly and fatherly feeling at the same time. And
Huh.
you'll meet it in your dream times. Everyone will.
okay.
And you'll have vision from it. Now, there'll be many in the religious scenarios that will have a tough time adjusting to that, but that's their healing. And then there'll be others that don't want to connect to the sentience of Earth because there was another planetary sentience that is before Earth. Those are refugee souls.
Ah,
The refugee souls that are here that aren't going to accept spiritual adoption, they'll have opportunities to finish what it is that they need and then go through a local stargate on the surface, so their consciousness leaves and goes direct to the consciousness of the planet they're going to. And that's the two planets form a chord of equity and allow the two spirit families to interact so that the one can get out of this reality and go to the other without having to finish their contracts.
Now, are there going to be those who simply want no part of any light or ascension process
There
at all?
will be those, because you know what? The light trapped them here too. The light didn't make it easier.
Right,
Okay, they made
right.
many mistakes. They became zealots.
Right.
And then there were ones that didn't become zealots and were trying to keep the balance.
Right. So what happens to those people? Just to continue.
They will get new lessons, because
Okay.
once we grow, all those beings that came to help us here grow too. And there'll be parts of those societies that are growing that will leave behind other parts of itself.
Okay. So some of the cards that will be put on the table at some point will be the
Royal flush.
yeah, right,
Somebody will have the royal flush.
right, and that will expose the royals, the Vatican, the mafia, the
King,
government,
the queen, the jack,
the black government,
That's right.
all of it, right?
and the ace.
And so, but we'll get to see these hands as they're revealed. And will that, I guess in a sense, that is kind of a sequential process.
Very sequential.
Because one literally has to be placed down.
In an information age.
Right, yeah. And so in a sense, that's a linear.
It's only linear for those that want to watch it linear.
Okay,
Okay?
that makes sense.
But there are others that just want to know what the results are. 'Cause
Right.
They're not going to
Just
be
give me
here
the
long.
final score.
So that's it. Give me the
Just
stats.
put
and
one.
the- Exactly.
I'm out of here. Okay.
Who's
good.
going back to be recycled and who's not?
Okay. And then how many players are there at this point that are holding cards? Would you guesstimate? Could have a major stake in this outcome?
Do you want me to separate it into individual avatars or all their pieces, parts interfunctioning?
Do both.
If it's all of their piece or parts interfunctioning, about 65 million.
Okay.
If it's just down to the avatars, about 17 million.
Okay. So those are the ones
That would be removed.
Okay. Good. And then they're removed to a court of
Spiritual court of equity
spiritual-
overseen by the Earth with the other galactics, the universes and galaxies in council as the equity court.
Okay. So there is quote unquote justice at some point.
Justice being the human limiting word because justice is blind. And
Right.
There's linguistics
right.
behind it, but there will be equity.
Equity, right.
Yeah, there'll
And
be
so
equity.
all of the deeds of the errant kids
Will be read from the Akashic record.
and there will and all sentient life will be able to
Learn from that record.
and then to make a decision as to what happens to those
Beings.
Mm-hmm. And I think you pointed out earlier that one option is the second death, which is
Going back.
returning
Central
to
sun.
right, and that just is a process of losing your memory. So they could technically get a dose of what they've been dishing out
In another domination and control world. Correct.
so they will come out in under domination and control.
They will be a part of the system.
Huh.
Made into management. And then they will be given the choice to undo the management. And
Huh.
give the world its freedom.
So
They will go right back into what they were doing.
Oh, okay.
With the
Alright.
choice to end it somewhere else.
oh. So that's kind of a
So they would heal their karma and that species.
can they renege on that? Would that be one trick that could be pulled at that?
They wouldn't renege.
No?
No.
Okay.
Because even if they renege, they got taken out once, what would stop them being taken out again?
Well, right. What would be the point of delaying the inevitable?
Exactly.
Yeah, and yeah.
Once they got you, they got you. And if they're giving you a choice in the free-willed universe,
Right.
make it.
Right,
Make it or don't.
right.
Ego's going to determine if they don't.
And then so those that don't are just basically undone, recycled. Okay, good. I got that. And
And we'll have to forgive a lot of them.
a lot will continue on, and because they're part of our soul family.
Right.
And a lot will make the choice to
Right.
heal and correct the mistakes that were.
Right. Just because Uncle Mary or Uncle Bob was a bad brother doesn't mean that Cousin Joe is.
Right, and that brings up a couple of things that we have to be very careful about judging others, but we also have to allow our anger and our judgment to occur,
Correct.
because we have to be able to discern what is a corrupt influence that's no longer useful to a healthy society.
Once the etheric satellites are taken out, we will really look back and realize how much psychic influence they had over our world. I told you about the predictive modeling. The etheric satellites give a whole new layer to the predictive modeling.
How do they work? And who put them there?
The control rooms, operate etheric satellites.
Okay.
And that's the way that the control rooms observes all the DNA level changes of the society, of every being that's there, and all that's put into data, and that data can be searched for in different terms. If they're looking how a species is consciously advancing or learning about its body, they can individually locate in different areas of a county or look at the entire world as a single
Right.
graph.
Right.
And when they see the entire world as a single graph, little things that they do can change the way the graph turns out. So with the use of these etheric satellites and with the use of the other instruments of the government arms.
So the government is complicit in putting those things there.
It is just part of the machine,
Right.
and it's complicit with the concept of the machine at the highest levels.
Okay.
Though many in the Congress and the Senate don't know, but they've been mind controlled to not care.
Right. Right. Right.
Okay?
Right. Yeah, that's pretty obvious.
Because they don't.
Right. They don't care, obviously.
And the
Yeah.
ones that do privately clear, this is your chance to make a difference. Put up or shut up. If not, get off our world.
So they're really being given an ultimatum too, because it's not business as usual.
Correct.
It's a time when conscience is really going to have to be allowed to manifest, and those
And
who
open as a blossom in the sun.
yes, yes, and those who want to bloom and blossom will, and the others will
Go back to seed.
yeah. Well, that's kind of like that parable,
Mhm.
the seeds being scattered and all that. Speaking of parables and things that came from ancient texts and Bibles, according to Barbara Marciniak's channeled Pleiadian material and others, the religions were all seated here holographically and inserted like a hologram.
Correct.
Okay.
In ink.
Right. So the ancient texts, the Vedas, and the Bible,
They were all written by multidimensional beings who were leapfrogging through time, who had the predictive models that I just described.
right.
So when they wrote texts that were hyperdimensional, multidimensional, and holographic, the way it was inserted into this time stream is fudging the numbers at those points to get the numbers that you want at the end. So all of those books were meant to influence the people of this generation, and then this generation would interpret it this way, and they predicted that.
Right.
And this generation would make it this way for 7 generations.
Right.
And then this one would change it, and they've had predictions of all of that, and we're able to keep the original source. That's why the Torah says it can only be translated this way.
Okay.
In Chinese, they can only be translated this way.
Okay. Are there original source documents that have not been tampered with?
Yes.
And where do those exist?
All over the secret societies.
Ah.
Because those are the texts that they use to make the controllers, the higher end ones.
And are the controllers involved with the control rooms?
Yes.
And there are how many control rooms? 20?
40.
40.
But 21 of them have been found, 19 have not been found.
Now, do we know if those 19 are?
We talked about in the episode about Lemuria, Hollow
Right.
Earth. The Hollow Earth has access to the other 19.
And
Those are their primary defensive systems and offensive systems of Earth, and they made sure that those would never be gotten into the weapon systems.
wonderful, wonderful. And
Weapons
so,
drive control.
oh, good, good. They're not like there are not enough weapons, etheric satellites and so on and so forth. What kind of technology took out the Twin Towers?
That's a really good question. The Twin Towers happen because of many reasons. I don't really talk about this much, but I will because it's the right time to do it. The Twin Towers was 27 layers of time travel wars, all coinciding at the exact moment the first airplane was figured out that it was a terrorist. And then at that time you had 6 local realities all intersecting on timeline manifestation. 5,200 races trying to counter it, and 15 multidimensional beings with 200 million parts of themselves in psychic influencing, all ascending at that exact point to try to create it while you had millions trying to stop it.
Okay.
And it happened for 2 reasons. One, it broke several dozen timelines down to being camouflage, because they showed their hand by making this destruction. And those several dozen timelines allowed them to shut down hundreds and thousands of others to reduce the big giant spider web weave of timelines that
Mhm.
were fake timelines
Mhm.
down to a predictable model.
Mm.
So they showed their hand by creating fear for 10 years of energy,
Okay.
which gave them the counterforces a greater predictive ability for what was happening next. Was 9/11 foreseen? It was, and it wasn't.
Right.
There were people that knew it was coming, and there were others that agreed it was coming, but didn't really understand what it was going to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So as I understand it, from my own information, it was a multidimensional event that occurred. For instance, there may have been pyrotechnics involved, and there may have been some kind of
Actually, everything happened.
And
all
right.
of the Twin Towers basically existed on all of the timelines and got attacked on all the timelines at the exact same time and defended on all the timelines at the exact same time. And then when timelines began fading and fading and fading, and we get back to the center graduation timeline, which is the one that affects all the other ones, is what the sum result of what we have is a hole in the ground.
or collapse or
Whatever the
merged
collapse,
timelines.
it was giving away how fake it is.
Right. Now, what was underneath? I saw that there was a duplicate of the Twin Towers underneath, and there was some kind of galactic civilization that's more advanced that actually planned it all out outside of time, as in a kind of artistic way. I saw an actual television program that was I saw on television, and it was a woman from some kind of advanced civilization, and she was in a museum, and she was explaining how the Twin Towers were created, and it was used as the breakup of duality was one of the messages. It was a wake-up call for humanity, and they crafted it. And in this museum were white paper mache people turning in fear. They were all white, life-size, and it panned through, and there was an Asian man who had helped with some of the graphics, and then the people who incarnated for that experience were kept unaware until they were pulled out at the moment that the
You're figuring it out. See, that's the dream time of the post-event, allowing those people who weren't ready to leave to go back to that time and
Okay.
fix it.
okay
So they can graduate in the future.
Okay. And so it's kind of paradoxical.
It is a paradox, that's the thing.
Yeah.
It was a design paradox.
But it was done with love.
Well, the thing is, the system has to respond to paradox.
Right.
They created the concept of a worldwide on-camera fear event.
Right.
And everyone said, okay, you're going to put on a worldwide fear event that's a paradox. Let's really up the ante and put 10 million people all time traveling to try to stop it.
Wow. All right. Cool. Cool. And see what would happen.
Let's roll the dice.
And what was the net effect of that?
10 years of fear
Right.
and a truther movement
And a truth movement.
that
Right.
never existed before.
Yes. Yes.
Worldwide.
Which is
In
growing.
an internet age.
Which is growing. And of course, for the controllers, it was a further win, pulling the gold out and manipulate, to whatever it is.
I call it, instead of the short buggy whip, they got the long buggy whip.
Okay.
But they're still in a buggy.
Okay. Well, we're about at the end of this segment, which flew by again like that little, bug that was flying around. So we will return with part 10, and stay tuned.
Stay tuned.